all share the same observation. There is more financing available today than there are mature, bankable projects ready to absorb it. The bottleneck lies not in liquidity, but in project preparation, structuring, and maturity to meet development partners' standards on governance, impact, and sustainability. Bridging this gap requires us to strengthen the interface between technical institutions, project developers, and financial partners, so that visionary national projects can evolve, helps government design and implement investment-ready green projects. The Coalition for Disaster-Resilient Infrastructure supports countries in strengthening the resilience of critical systems. The United Nations Global Compact provides access to global knowledge networks on sustainability and responsible investment. UNDP and UN Habitat also offer targeted technical assistance, often funding sustainability experts to work alongside local institutions, not just to build infrastructure, but to build capacity and independence. These examples represent only a small part of a much larger ecosystem. Across Africa, dozens of international and regional partners stand ready to help us strengthen the systems, skills, and standards required to lead the transition to resilient, sustainable infrastructure. The opportunity is here. The financing exists. The expertise is available. What is needed now is leadership, coordination, and commitment to turn potential into progress. Investing in sustainable and resilient infrastructure is not only an environmental imperative, it is a driver of competitiveness, job creation, and long-term economic stability. Many African development plans remain only partially implemented, largely due to limited domestic financing. By embracing sustainable infrastructure, we not only protect what we build, but also unlock access to international climate and development finance to bridge funding gaps. Africa has the chance to build differently, to create infrastructure that lasts, protects, and empowers. The path forwards depend on one thing: our collective decision to act now and to make resilience the foundation of Africa's transformation. As Côte d'Ivoire National Technical Agency, BNET has been driving transformation for nearly 5 decades, turning vision into execution and plans into tangible progress. Today, we are among the pioneers in West Africa, implementing a new model of sustainable climate-resilient infrastructure, one built on 3 pillars: consolidating ecosystem, connecting government partners, technical actors around shared priorities, transforming projects, turning strategic ideas into bankable, climate-compatible investment, and securing financing, bridging national needs with international climate and development funds. This experience positions BNET as a trusted partner for any African country seeking to structure or accelerate its sustainable infrastructure agenda. To my colleagues and delegates who share this vision, I warmly invite you to connect with me after this session. Let us explore how BNET can collaborate with your institutions to co-develop projects that drive transformation and resilience for our continent. Once again, on behalf of BNet, I extend heartfelt thanks to the Royal Majesties, the Olu and Olori of Wari, for the gracious invitation and the opportunity to partner with Elevate Africa. Together, let us continue to elevate Africa towards lasting prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up one more time for Mr. Koulibaly. And since you're actually on the next panel, you can go right ahead and have a seat. Anyone, your choice. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, our next session is coming up on sustainable infrastructure for economic transformation. And we've had such a great prelude from Mr. Koulibaly here, who is CEO of the Bureau of the National Studies of Techniques and Development. And once again, just a reminder that this incredible session that is coming up is sponsored by the Bureau of National Studies of Techniques and Development. Thank you. Yes, give it up. So it is my pleasure to now introduce our moderator for this session. And we have Mr. Peter Julapamo, who is the partner and managing director of Aliridi. Please welcome Mr. Julapamo to the stage. Welcome. Joining this panel, we also have Ms. Zurina Saban, who is the General Counsel of Africa 50. Ms. Zurina, welcome to the stage. Thank you. And we also have Dr. Elizabeth Jack Rich, who is the founder and president of Elizabeth Jack Rich Aid Foundation. Please welcome Ms. Elizabeth, Dr. Elizabeth to the stage. And finally, we have Ms. Kuso Kamwambi, who is the head of Presidential Delivery Unit of Zambia. Please welcome her to the stage. Thank you very much, Mr. Julapamo. Please take it away.
Can everyone hear me? Good. Good morning. I think we're still on the edge of the morning. It's a privilege to host this high-level panel discussion, but I just want to acknowledge the royal family, Ogiame Atuashe III and Olori Atuashe III, for their visionary leadership. So before we get started, I think it's important to lay the foundation for our discussion. So I'm going to drop some data points and then use that as a jump-off point for you guys to come in. When we think about economic growth theory, that is the core of when we say elevate Africa. We need to think about the components that make up economies going from low income to high income. And infrastructure is a big part of that. So, some data points to help frame, right? And Mr. Koulibaly has already referenced some of it, but I will build on some of what he said. Nearly 70% of infrastructure on the continents is yet to be built, and this is needed by 2040. But to juxtapose with that, by 2040, we're going to have 1.1 billion people in the workforce of Africa. That's bigger than China and India combined. So infrastructure development is not just a physical or economic imperative. It is the foundation for human capital, innovation, and productive growth. Point two, Africa is being forced right now to deal with a problem that it didn't create, as we know, around climate change, right? So we're forced to divert resources towards repairing the consequences of climate change as opposed to investing for the future in resilience and growth. Mr. Koulibaly already referenced this, but let me just pick up on it again. Climate change and climate impact is projected to erode 2 to 4% of Africa's GDP growth year by year. So the insight here is pretty clear, right? Climate inaction threatens the environment, but it locks Africa into a low-growth, high-vulnerability trap. And this is what we're trying to come out of. But then maybe the final point here is where the story doesn't add up for me. Let's think about the dichotomy of what we just said. We know that there's funding. We know that we need to activate the workforce. We know that infrastructure is the backbone of that. We know that the returns on investing in infrastructure is profitable, but we're not doing it. Why is that? The economics make sense, the need is urgent, the potential is undeniable. So my first question to this brilliant panel, where we have financing partners, technical partners, policy advisors, and innovators in the industry, putting you guys on the spot, what is the single biggest bottleneck in Africa's infrastructure story? Financing, execution, or governance? And basically, which one of you is the problem? Zarina, go first, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Zarina Saban. I work for Africa 50. I'm very happy to be here in Botswana. It's a shareholder of Africa 50, so I'm really happy to be in a shareholder country. You say I'm financing, but I'm really a lawyer, so I almost want to gravitate towards governance. We heard a lot about governance yesterday. We even saw a graph where we realized that in a country with good institutions and governance has more positive impact on its citizens. I know that when I'm investing, I'm looking at governance. I know when I'm fundraising, someone's asking me many, many governance questions, and I want to confirm that governance unlocks the door to the next conversation, which is financing. What's the problem in financing? You set out so lovely the needs in Africa, its potential. Every year, Africa needs between $350 and $400 billion in financing for infrastructure. Do we raise that? No. Every year, there's a shortfall of between $130 billion and $170 billion. That means our infrastructure is not getting built. And with a growing population where we need better transport, we need more digital connectivity, the problem becomes bigger. So as someone who invests and is a financier, it's easy to say financing is the problem. The third limb, of course, is execution. Is that the bottleneck? The fact is that only 10% of projects get to final close. So it's easy to say that execution is actually the problem. If we look on a transaction by transaction basis, I can tell you very easily what is missing in a particular transaction. But given where we are and seeing Africa as one big entity, our continent, I think we might get lost if we focus only on one limb. The fact is, without governance, you can't unlock the door to financing. Without financing, you can't get to execution. With no track record in execution, you're kind of in a vicious circle. So I see them as integrated. I want to end by saying that the potential of Africa is huge. For example, Africa has the capability to produce 60% of the world's energy production from solar. 60%. We only do 1%. The potential is huge if we focus only on governance, or only on financing, or only on execution. I don't see us fixing the problem. I really think an approach focusing on all three is important.
That's great. We're going to come back to sector focus in a minute, and I'll love your view on that. But Elizabeth, maybe tell me, who do you think the problem is?
Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's afternoon. Just to buttress on what she said, to be honest, it might sound strange coming from a technical point of view that I don't really think financing alone is the problem. I also believe we have to look at regulatory delays that can affect funding cycles. Like every investor wants to invest with a set cycle, and we expect the government to create policies that encourage, these investments. So if we think financing alone is just the problem and negate other issues surrounding government policies, then we're not ready for this conversation. Thank you.
Very interesting. I do agree with that. And there's an argument that governance is always lagging behind innovation or ideas. So that's very interesting that you say that. It's how do we put governance as almost a pioneer to help drive or accelerate the agenda. So thank you for that perspective. Kina, please.
Thank you. I would say that, so to me, from what we have seen on several projects, is the difficulties mainly in governance, but I would say closely followed by execution. But a lot of the execution problems that we are seeing stems from problem with governance. I would say unclear policies, difficulties in procurement, lack of data and transparency. So everything, all these elements make difficulties when you are at the execution levels. So to me, if you're able to improve the governance, you can improve the execution, and then the financing can follows.
Thank you. I feel like everyone is picking on you, Kuso, so you might have to defend the governance corner.
Thank you, Peter, and good morning, everyone. I just thought I should mention to the organizers, first of all, that congratulations on picking relevant topics for Africa right now. I think from yesterday to today, all of us will agree that most of the topics on stage have been relevant. At some point when you attend these conferences, you want to leave at some point because it gets a bit boring or irrelevant. But I just want to say congratulations to Elevate Africa for picking the right topics that are affecting Africa right now. Of course, coming from the policy side and from the governance side, it's easy for all of us to say, look, it's the bankability of our projects, it's how we prepare our documents, it's all those things. But I'd like to disagree a little because I believe that the playing field is already skewed. And of course, I'll get to solutions later. But it's already skewed in that if you look at mineral resources, for example, as a starting point, Africa holds over 30% of the strategic minerals in the world. However, we only get about less than 5% of the revenue arising from mining. We only are able to access 5% or less of the global funds that are available for mining. So let's call a spade a spade. Everything is already skewed even before we talk about the nature of our projects. Now, thank you. So coming to the projects themselves, of course, you've got to make sure that the rules are not all over the place. You've got to make sure that the projects are bankable, the feasibility is on point. And when your governance and your execution is trustable, like if you know that this particular country, if we invest in it, the execution will be good, you've got proven deliverables, of course the money will follow. Textbook theory, it should be that way. But what's actually happening right now is that you find that it becomes very difficult for us to access most of this financing because of the conditionalities. It's almost designed to fail because you almost can't qualify all the time. So we really have to be shifting the conversations to finding ourselves in the room where some of these transactions are being structured and the conditions for these funds are being decided. I remember a quote once by our first president, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, where he found his people, black people, being chased away from a white butchery where, first of all, they were selling rotten meat and at a high cost, so people were protesting, but they were being pushed away from that. And from that day, he decided he wasn't going to eat meat again, and he wasn't going to eat it because if one African can't afford it, then he doesn't deserve to eat it. And that's the sort of appetite we should be having as Africans sitting in some of these rooms where these rules are being decided. Is it a level playing field? It cannot be one size fits all. The rules can't be the same for everyone. We have the resources. Let's start with that trust that we can pay back using our resources, and then we can take the conversation forward.
Thank you so much for that perspective. So let me shift gears a little and dig into sector focus. I think some of you already touched on it. But I just want to reflect on something that I heard recently from the U.S. Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright. He said, energy is the sector that everything else runs off. If we get it wrong, everything else will suffer. Some people have gone on to say many times that energy is not a climate issue, and we get bogged down in that debate. It's actually a national security issue, right? Or in our case, because we're discussing Elevate Africa, it's a continental security issue. But yet, 600 million people out of the 1.4 billion people in the world, 600 million people across Africa still live without electricity. So my question to the panel, and maybe I'll start with you, Zarina, is if you had to choose a sector focus, because you mentioned energy earlier, where do you think we should prioritize infrastructure to unlock resilience for Africa? Is it energy? Is it transportation? Is it coastal protection, as Mr. Koulibaly mentioned? Or is it something else that we're not really currently investing in? And what are you guys doing at Africa 50 to drive that agenda forward?
Thank you. That's such an important question. Africa 50 focuses on infrastructure development. It's not that one sector is particularly more important than the other. Everything needs to unlock. Energy, I think, is the backbone of everything. As you just mentioned, 600 million people without energy. That means no computer access. That means no electricity to study. That means our growing population. We're the fastest growing population. How are we educating them? So energy, I think, is a very key component. But let's focus on trade. Transport is very important too. Roads and ports, very important. We have our manufacturing done in one country, you want to trade with another country, stuck at the border sometimes for 3 to 5 days. Investment in that sector is often overlooked. At Africa 50, we've invested in a system called scanning systems, where between Burkina and Togo, it used to take 3 to 5 days to get through the border. It now takes 3 to 5 hours for people to get in. So I think when we have a narrow view of what infrastructure is, we shoot ourselves in the foot. The needs of Africa are huge. The needs of Africa need to be addressed urgently. Start somewhere. Choose energy because you have a passion for it, but choose transport or choose digital connectivity. Just please start somewhere.
I'll circle back to the digital connectivity in a second. Please. Thank you. Yeah, I'll circle back to digital connectivity and digital infrastructure in a second, but let me come to you, Kina. What are you, as a leader in one of the more established infrastructure advisory firms in West Africa, well, actually in Africa, what sector is a priority to you and also for the government of the Ivory Coast?
Thank you, Peter. So as she was saying, I think that energy is key. Of course, because it enables a lot of things. It enables industrialization, digital economy, healthcare, water systems. So, of course, that's something that's really important. Besides energy, I would say that digital infrastructure is becoming more and more important, because digital infrastructure allows to drive productivity, transparency, and is key in order to be able to have more services that are more and more resilient. So I would say that digital infrastructure is key, and water systems are also very, very important. Of course, there's the drinking water, but it's key also for agriculture, being able to have more agricultural systems that are more and more efficient and more resilient. So mastering water in order to have agriculture which is more efficient is really important. So these are the sectors that we are seeing that are becoming more and more important.
Thank you, Kina. Elizabeth, let me come to you. In a recent interview with Business Inside Africa, you spoke about strong support and collaboration that your organization has received from regulators and policymakers. But you also noted that the industry could benefit even more from streamlined bureaucratic processes and targeted funding for the infrastructure development of the aviation space that you're in. Could you expand on that, particularly the point on infrastructure development? What's hindering your innovation right now?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, for me, infrastructure is more than steel, roads, and concrete. It determines whether children reach schools, whether goods reach market, or nations compete or are left behind. I mean, Africa is facing an annual financing gap of exceeding over $100 billion. And within this gap lies our greatest opportunity, which is to build differently, to build sustainably, and to build for ourselves. At Ellen Group, we don't just see infrastructure as a project. We see it as an ecosystem to connect mobility, to connect energy, and to connect people. I mean, I'm going to leverage on Ellen here, one of the subsidiaries we operate at Ellen Group. We recently just completed the very first 7,800 landing check, which is a maintenance technical check done on aircraft, the first ever to be done in Africa. Thank you very much. I mean, as a women-led business, licensed both in AOC and AMO certifications, we provide services across, we're a one-stop shop solution, I must say, deep-rooted in African excellence. And during our maintenance, we had the support of government. I must give it to them. We had the support of our regulatory bodies, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority. But there were things like some animosities about the lack of confidence in our capacity. And at Ellen, what we try to do is to show the world that there is capacity and there is excellence in African operations.
That's right.
And we have demonstrated that African companies can actually build world-class infrastructure from within Africa. And our operations are innovation-based, and we drive, our operations with technology to further improve in-flight safety, improved cost efficiency, and also connect Africans' potential to its people and build infrastructure that is surrounded and centered on African excellence. So, like I said earlier, we currently we face a lot of issues as well from the government, in as much as we have their support, like regulatory delays. It's one of the bottlenecks that we face in our industry. If we're talking about accessing to financing, we have to talk about regulatory delays and how we can mitigate these issues. We have to talk about inflation. In my industry, where we have to, most airlines operate in our local currency, and most operations are done outside of Africa, we have to look at the foreign exchange. It's not stable. And at this point, you're planning a budget for a maintenance to be done outside of the country at a particular rate or exchange rate, and by the time you're ready to get it done, the inflation is there. So this has, rendered a lot of airline businesses inoperational, and it can be very frustrating. Aviation is very important. I'm in the mining sector as well, and that was why I was very interested in what she was saying. As a licensed miner, it is very important to what she said. Yes, the government are trying to play their part. Local content is important. When local content is not well established, it doesn't give people like us in these industries the comfort, the confidence to invest. We're talking about bringing in funding into these sectors. What about security? Infrastructure is important, but what about the security around our infrastructure? I won't go to a foreign investor to come in, and I can provide security. I can give them the confidence that someone with a bigger pocket is going to come and take away the license from me. yes, there is a lot of, support from the government, but still, we still have a long way to go. And that is giving the confidence and empowering our locals and establishing local content partnerships with foreign investors, not them just coming in and taking our resources. Because that way we will never be able to build an ecosystem surrounding our mineral resources or our infrastructure that are locally built. So yes, my plea would be to the government to look into these things that affect industries like what we operate in and what we're talking about. Yeah.
Love that. Thank you for that perspective. And, it's like the old saying, when you go for a job interview, they say you don't have any experience, but you need a job to have the experience, right? So I love that you're really passionate about connecting to Africa's talents. Kuso, maybe I'll come to you here and we can segue into the next question, the role that institutions have to play in empowering these industries, right? Elizabeth mentioned already the work that she's doing in the aviation space. We know that that's key, right? Because we don't have a direct flight, for example, from Nigeria to Botswana. Why do we have to go through Europe to come here, et cetera, et cetera? So from your perspective, and just building on the last question and Elizabeth's comments, what reforms and guarantees could better reassure investors, private investors, DFIs, to accelerate financing of strategic projects? And how can the government or governance be less of a bottleneck in that sense?
Thank you. Very good question. I think I'll speak on the Zambia experience here, and I hope someone in the room can relate. More than ever, right now, it's time for governments to reform. I think ease of doing business is on the agenda for most governments. So definitely, as a government, we are trying to reform to ensure that we facilitate local content, for example, like Dr. Elizabeth said. Happy to announce that we just signed our local content SI. Yes, and one of the biggest mining operations that is about to start in Zambia had a fair yesterday and over the weekend registering local suppliers. So definitely government is doing something to make sure that our local suppliers have a fair share of the market in the mining sector.
That's great.
So speaking of which, I think coming into government and working under the presidency of Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, popularly known as President HH, and God bless us, we have a president from private sector who's really trying to drive private sector mentality and rules in our administration. But coming in 2021 to where we are today, I think we faced what I would call poly-crisis. Anything that could possibly go wrong did go wrong, starting with the worst drought of our time, meaning that we got affected in terms of energy. Zambia relies more than 85% on hydropower. So we always relied on the rain, which was always available to give us electricity. So that fell through. Speaking about the COVID pandemic, cholera, all these things really stretched us out. And also walking into what we were not aware of, the debt situation, and how we had to now start restructuring our debt. So even before we can think about investments in infrastructure and all these things that we're talking about, we had to do the debt servicing. And we're only left with very little money where we have to take care of our social concerns, which are top priority for any government. And of course, that leaves us with very little money to invest in infrastructure and other economic activities. So basically just sharing that we had so many crises happening at the same time, and so many things going wrong. So this means that we definitely had to think of other reformative ways to get ourselves out of this deep, dark hole. And that began with obviously looking at alternative sources of financing, meaning leveraging more on public-private partnerships for financing government projects, including infrastructure. Right now, we are doing our biggest road project on a PPP model, which is proving to be very successful, which is the Lusaka-Ndola dual carriage highway that links the capital city to the mining towns. We've done about 9 projects so far, road projects, major road projects on a PPP model, something that we had to learn. Blended financing, external financing, a lot of things that we had to do in a very short period of time, and really just thinking outside the box. Yesterday, someone mentioned that we have to look at or challenges as opportunities to do things better. And I think for us, that's what came out of it. We challenged ourselves to say, how do we reform? How do we make things better for our people? When it comes to having projects approved and moving projects from pre-feasibility to financial close, we realized that there were a lot of bottlenecks, especially when it comes to the delays in licensing, the delays in registering your company and getting all the environmental approvals. And we had most of our investors complaining that, look, I can't spend 24 months trying to turn a project around just by getting through the government processes. So we've come up with a lot of other ingenious things, such as, for example, what we're calling the presumptive approval. We had the sector, telecommunications sector, for example, complain that, look, we want to plant towers all over the country, but it takes about 18 months for the Environmental Management Agency to give us a license. But if you look at the default rate in terms of these companies planting the tower in the wrong place, it's negligible. It's under 1%. So the chances that they will plant the tower in the wrong place are really very low. And then you have this agency that has to take 18 months to tell you where you can plant the tower. And so we've removed all that. We say plant the tower, the agency will follow you later with their bureaucracies. And if you're in the wrong place, they'll tell you to move it. And chances are usually you're not in the wrong place. So all those presumptive approvals, one-stop shop, where we have one licensing window for all the 13 licenses that you need to do business in a particular sector. So our government, not sure about what others are doing, but for us, we are looking at the problems that the citizen is facing, looking at the problems that the investor is facing, and making sure that as government, we facilitate the appropriate reforms to make business easier to do. We're also trying to see how we can facilitate better preparation of project documents. We have a pipeline right now, for example, for energy projects, where we've done a lot of reforms in our energy sector. Having faced the drought and having relied on water as our main source of power, we then had to think of other firm renewables that we could use, like solar. And so we have this solar explosion, is what we're calling it, which is a 1,000 megawatt solar project, where we've gathered a number of projects. And my team, as the Presidential Delivery Unit, what we do is look at all these projects, help them to speed up their approvals, help them to become bankable, and then try to see how we link them to investors. So a lot of reform happening in that space. And I'm sure many other governments are doing the same thing. But one last thing that we've been able to do is ride on the power of collaboration. Yesterday, someone said collaboration is the new currency. We're working closely with our neighboring countries, working closely with friendly investors as well to see how we can facilitate more projects using alternative financing solutions, seeing that we're not in a position to finance most of these projects ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuso. Thank you for that perspective, and I think it's a good segue into financing the future, right? Because you just highlighted that. The future is not going to finance itself. We know the capital is available because we've already talked about that earlier. We know that there's a huge gap to fill, as Serena, you already highlighted. But clearly something is still missing. I mean, in our conversations with DFIs and financing partners, they say capital is available, it's there. But what's missing to make these projects bankable, as she just mentioned? What's your view on this? Why can't Africa 50 just fund everything now?
We would love to be honest. We all working there because of our passion. For Africa, speaking for myself, I have children who I'm afraid in the future will turn to me and say, Mama, what did you do? You've started in human rights, you've worked in development finance, what did you do? Capital is out there, but it's a little bit frustrating to access it. So, I'm going to focus on 3 areas. One, the pipeline of bankable projects. A couple of our speakers here spoke about that already. What does that mean? Technically sound projects that are economically viable and well-structured. We don't have a good pipeline for that. Everyone wants to invest in a project that already is generating revenues and dividends. What we've done at Africa 50 is 10% of our balance sheet is for these early stage deals, pre-bankable deals. In addition, we just raised money into a fund focused on climate and green transactions, where we managed to raise 118 million but want to catalyze 10 billion. That is the biggest fund for pre-bankable deals in Africa. How can that be? We need to do a little bit more. So the pipeline, we need to build it. That's the one thing. The other thing is a lot of our institutional investors, they are looking for huge projects. So if you're looking for 3 billion for your project, it's almost easy to find financing for that. But in Africa, the fact is that a lot of our projects are small. 50 million is a small project, actually. 100 million is a small project. And big investors don't want to take the time and energy to diligence this. They really want the bigger projects. One of my suggestions, and what we've been doing at Africa 50, is to try to aggregate assets into a cluster so that they're more attractive, or to pool money into funds to invest in that way. Those are the two solutions. We need to keep thinking, of course. The last thing, and this is a perception item, there's a difference between real risk and perception of risk. When we look externally, the perception of risk in Africa is always high, which means that the cost of the financing is really high, affecting the economics of the transaction. I want to turn to something that our governor from Namibia mentioned earlier. Look inward. There's money in Africa. We Africans should be investing in our own infrastructure. We understand our risks better than anyone external to Africa can. And together, I think if we work together with our local institutional investors, I think we can produce different results.
Thank you for that, Serena. So I think there is, I love what you said about perceived risk and actual risk, but they must be, I'm just going to push you a little bit. There must be smarter ways to de-risk, these projects. Or, if you take, for example, some of the models that you maybe see in Kenya, for example, the PPP Directorate, what are ways that we can activate it faster? Is my question.
And definitely there are models. Blended financing is one, for example, where you can find lenders who will take first loss risk on a transaction to try to make the economics more attractive. There's political risk insurance as another example. I think the examples are there. The problem is they're not well aggregated, and they're definitely underutilized. I think when people are going for financing, they need to think through how to de-risk by going and presenting already solutions to that, especially to investors external to Africa. They may not be aware that those de-risking tools are available.
Thank you. Kina, can I pull you in there? What is your view? You're someone who is on the forefront of the execution and trying to connect that ecosystem. What's your view?
A lot of interesting things have already been said. I would say that to me, project preparation is really key, and this is what is very, very often missing, because the time that you think that you can gain by going directly and discussing with a project owner or with a project developer, at the end of the day, you do not agree and you end up losing even more time. So what we did, for instance, in Côte d'Ivoire is creating a fund, a special fund, to do pre-feasibility studies of the different projects. And I think that we can go even further than this, and trying to see how we can bring in the private sector in order to be able to fund pre-feasibility studies. One element, so we are talking about sustainable infrastructure, and one element very important to take into account is when you are doing these preliminary studies, is how you are going to fund, at the end of the day, the infrastructure you are talking about. And taking into account early ESG criteria can actually help you in order to be able to fund this project afterwards. Because this is something that we are seeing very often, is that a lot of elements are are not taken into account. And then when you go and you start to discuss with Africa 50, for instance, they're asking you some new questions. So have you taken this into account, No, and you need to start to start again. So I would say that yes, product preparation is very important. And coming back to also what Kuso was saying, being able to speed up the processes to get the different licenses and permits, land permits, this is very, very important as well. Thank you.
Peter. I'm not sure how long we have left because I can't see anything on the screen. Oh, there you go, 2 minutes, thank you. Okay, so maybe let me shift gears on the digital infrastructure side before I wrap up. We know when we talk about growth and productivity, digital infrastructure is already a major driver, right? So mobile technology alone today in Africa is 7.7% of African GDP. That's about 220 billion. And there are multiple studies that show that a 10-point increase in mobile broadband penetration can raise GDP per capita by 1 to 2.5% in developing economies. But there's the other dimension of data sovereignty, right? Africa today, the data center capacity is expanding, but as it stands, it's still less than 2% of global capacity. And we've talked about the demographics and all the other things that we know are coming to help us be more competitive and have digital independence. So from your perspective, Elizabeth, what role does digital infrastructure play in building not just connectivity, but sustainability and economic resilience for Africa's future?
Yeah, that's not my field, but I could talk to him that. I think it's very important considering the fact that we're now going digital. I mean, with the integration of AI, for instance, in our business, like I said earlier, we center our operations around innovation and ensuring that, you know, we're data-driven as a company. And also, I kind of look at this from, you know, a slightly different perspective, which is also, when we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about sustainability. And for me, sustainability means, you know, people. I mean, with Erling, at Erling project, we start with social mapping, you know, engaging with communities, engaging with, will I say, leaders, traditional leaders, co-creating development goals. And we ensure that we create transparent compensation programs and integrating the community by ensuring that they feel some sort of ownership. We're talking about infrastructure, talking about mineral, talking about digital infrastructure. All of this is centered around host communities. We can't talk about Africa today without talking about the host communities that create Africa. And when we don't just make communities spectators, they actually become stakeholders and they become custodian of sustainability, which makes either digital or the traditional infrastructure reliable, sustainable, and easier for funding. Nobody, I say, internationally or in the Western world would want to come into Africa and invest in, in a project that doesn't have enough security around it or doesn't have the involvement of the community because they want to feel safe with their investment. So it is very important that when we drive digital infrastructure or we drive innovation, it's key to also understand the importance of the role the host communities have to play in this. I'm speaking from my businesses that in the sectors I run in, we can never do anything without host communities. So this is the core of what drives our innovation and our operational, excellence at Erling Group. Thank you.
Love it, and I love that it's on the backbone of collaboration, which is exactly what Elevate Africa is for.
Definitely.
Okay, so to wrap up very quickly, because we like actionable points, we want to do something about all these conversations. We don't just want to have conversations for the sake of having conversations. And obviously, this is everyone's view because they told me this is the best panel discussion so far. You guys are meant to say yes. Let's go. In your opinion, if we were to leave this room, 30 seconds please each, with one single continental commitment to accelerate sustainable infrastructure, what would that be? Kuso.
This is not a beauty pageant. It's not going to be 30 seconds. This is an important conversation, and just allow me to take a minute. I think that Africa must invest in Africa. It's not enough for us to continue perfecting our documents. It's not enough for us to continue having these conversations and hope that someone can trust us when we have the mineral resources. I think we need to start co-creating our own solutions. I think that we need to start de-risking our own projects. I think we need to use our pension funds and our institutions better because they can provide some of the de-risking mechanisms that we're talking about. We need to look at private sector crowdfunding within Africa. And I think to move the conversation from intent to impact, from this high-level panel to actual deals, we need to start developing those platforms where these deals can happen. We speak at such a platform. I speak at many conferences, and I never see the people again. So I just want to challenge Daniel that next time we meet at Elevate Africa, I want to see a live dashboard where there's a pipeline of projects that are ready for funding across Africa, and we all can pledge towards those particular transactions. So that's what I can say. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuso. Kino.
Thank you, Peter. So I would say that on the theme of collaboration, again, I think that we need to share more successful stories. We need to be able to know more what's going on. I mean, it was very interesting to hear so from Malawi. It's very interesting to hear what's being done in Nigeria and in Africa 50. So, but it's difficult to have access to this information. So we need to be able to share more so that the good lesson, the lesson learned can be used all around the continent. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth, what's a single continental commitment?
As a woman leading in aviation, oil and gas services, and mining, I've learned that leadership is not just about position, but purpose. And my purpose is to show that African daughters can lead in industries that we were once excluded in, not just breaking the barriers, but also creating the bridge to, create opportunities. And I believe that when Africa builds for itself with vision, innovation, and heart, the world would not just see us as a rising continent, but a continent that leads. And like my fellow panelists said, I look forward to progressing this conversation into real deals and partnerships, and hoping that the government of Botswana and Nigeria will come to some sort of a roundtable conversation about collaborating within the aviation sector for easy access, and to also make trade easy, because when aviation is stifled, we definitely consider a lot of things around the accessibility of coming into these countries, which make it difficult for investment and opportunities to be created amongst the nations. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Zarina, what do we need to do to get Africa 50 to release all the money?
I want to focus on financing and on the theme of let's look inward. Our pension funds and insurance companies manage $2 trillion worth of assets. $2 trillion. How much are they investing into Africa? 3%. At Africa 50, we closed one fund recently where we managed to get 20 African institutions to invest into a fund. It was the first time ever, which means that they are starting to look inward and investing in African products. It was hard work to convince them because that's not their model. But what I'd like to see coming off the back of this is ideas for how we can collaborate to unlock the money at the pension funds. With $2 trillion, if they give us just 60 billion every year, can you imagine how many more projects we can finance? So I'm looking for anyone who will help me to partner in trying to unlock that money so we can do more investment into infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Kuso, Kina, Elizabeth, Serena, great conversation. This is Elevate Africa. Africa is rising, but Africa also needs its infrastructure to catch up with its ambition. Thank you so much. Yes, yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Across Africa, a new force is gathering. It is strategic, it is deliberate, it is led by women. Women who are not only creating opportunity, but aligning their power to multiply it. They are builders of enterprise, stewards of community, and architects of the future. Yet the systems they navigate are still shaped by exclusion. Women represent half of Africa's population. They lead 27% of early-stage businesses, the highest rate in the world, but they hold only 26% of parliamentary seats and fewer than 10% of board positions in Africa's top companies. This is not a gap. It is a structural fault line, and it is time to shift the ground. Women Allying Women is a pan-African movement designed to do just that. It is a platform for influence, for collaboration, and for access. Not access for the few, but for many. Not symbolic presence, but institutional power. Not isolated leadership, but a generation of women leaders rising together. From high-impact convenings in Lagos and Warri to enterprise ecosystems and strategic mentorship frameworks, Women Allying Women is laying the foundation for lasting change. It operates through 3 strategic pillars: leadership ecosystems that position women at the center of decision-making, advocacy and narrative platforms that elevate African women's voices across sectors, and intergenerational mentorship networks that translate experience into legacy. This is how systems shift, not by chance, by design, by networks of women who lead with intention, align with purpose, and expand the future for others. Women Allying Women is not an event. It is an instrument for influence, for equity, for Africa's rise. Because the future is not something we wait for. It is something we shape together.
African fashion have captured global attention recently, gracing runways in the likes of London, Paris, and New York.
African designers are weaving tradition into every stitch, ensuring the fabrics and styles become garments to preserve African heritage. Designers like Hetumba, Kilanta, Hanifa, Lisa Folawio, Imada Duso, Studio 189, and Lucanio Mdingi are redefining what it means to wear African culture. Through their use of indigenous fabrics and craftsmanship, they tell stories of heritage, identity, and pride, preserving age-old traditions while capturing the attention of a global audience. In Ghana, brands like Studio 189 manufactured the entire collection locally, leveraging traditional techniques such as hand batiking, bogolanfi, and indigo dyeing. They work directly with artisan communities who have practiced these crafts for generations, such as Kente weavers in Bonwire and batik artisan in Cape Coast, and bringing those fabrics into contemporary silhouettes. In Nigeria, Designers such as Hutumba and Kilanta rely extensively on indigenous fabrics such as Akwete, Adire, and Ashoke. And in South Africa, Lucanio Mdingi's collection honor Xhosa weaving traditions, merging heritage with contemporary minimalism. Africa's fashion renaissance is powered by designers who see every stitch as a story and every fabric as a vessel of history. These bustling African designers are not just creating garments, they're preserving heritage and craft through style. Today, their work transcends borders, using fashion as a tool to preserve African identity and heritage beyond the continent, weaving culture into the global conversation. Not all African countries have a bad governance reputation. Across the continent, there are nations quietly building models that the world can learn from, systems anchored on accountability, transparency, and innovation. Take Mauritius, for instance, consistently ranked Africa's best governed nation by the Chandler Good Government Index. Its strength lies in strong democratic institutions, a reliable judiciary, and policies that support economic diversification beyond tourism. With steady investments in education and technology, Mauritius shows how small island states can thrive through governance that puts people first. In Rwanda, efficiency and accountability define governance. Since the early 2000s, the country has built one of Africa's most disciplined civil services. From community-driven development programs like Umuganda to its zero-tolerance stance on corruption, Rwanda's focus on results has become a model for effective statecraft in emerging economies. Botswana stands as one of Africa's longest-running democracies. Since independence in 1966, the country has maintained political stability, prudent economic management, and one of the lowest corruption rates on the continent. Its diamond wealth is transparently managed through strong public-private partnerships, proving that natural resources can fuel national development when handled with integrity. In Ghana, democracy is deeply rooted. Peaceful transitions of power, an active civil society, and vibrant media continue to strengthen its democratic culture. Institutions like the Electoral Commission and the Right to Information Act ensure that governance remains transparent and accountable to citizens. Further south, Namibia is often cited for its rule of law and independent judiciary. The government has worked to strengthen public accountability mechanisms and digitalize judicial processes. Its governance approach, inclusive and transparent, demonstrates how institutional integrity can anchor national stability. Together, these countries reflect Africa's growing capacity to redefine what good governance looks like, from digital reforms and anti-corruption systems to community participation and visionary leadership. They remind the world that Africa is not a continent of failed systems, but one of evolving models where lessons in democracy, discipline, and development are being written every day.
All right, how are we doing? Oh, I can hear you. How are you doing? I know we're ready for lunch, and I promise you we will get there right after this session coming up. And this next panel is super exciting. I'm very excited about that. But before that, can we give another round of applause to our last panelist? Incredible, incredible discussion. Okay, so up next we have our session on bridging borders, unlocking trade through seamless intra-African payments. And this is a very important conversation, and we have an expert panel that is going to be joining us for this discussion. So let's get straight to it. I am excited to bring up our moderator, Miss Karen Matsiko, who is the founder of Pivot Edge Advisory and Consultancy. Please give her a big round of applause. And Karen, I am stealing your closet, okay? Doesn't she look amazing? Okay, up next, we have Mr. Abraham Ojo, who is the head of strategy for Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. Please welcome him to the stage. And we have Mr. Ali Atman, who is the head of partnerships for Visa Government Solution. Please welcome him to the stage. Up next, Mr. Ehi Benite, who is a founder of Rankcard, and also an MIT KSI Fellow and Bridge. And we also just discovered we have one thing in common. Ghana, yes, it's good to see another Ghanaian in the house. Up next, we have Mrs. Adesua Okumbo Rhodes, who is the founder and managing partner of Aurora Capital Management. Please welcome her to the stage. And representing Botswana Investment Trade Center, we have Kabo Sebele, who is the Director of Investment Promotion at the Botswana Investment Trade Center. Welcome to the stage. And last but not the least, please welcome Dr. Akin Akimpelu, who is the CEO of Akin Akimpelu Learning and Development. Please welcome to the stage. Karen, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much. Your Royal Majesty, Ogame Atuashe, Your Royal Majesty, Olori Atuashe, distinguished presidents, ambassadors, CEOs, and fellow visionaries, good afternoon. It's a profound honor to be here under the royal patronage of two leaders who embody Africa's grace, wisdom, and progressive spirit. As the founder of Pivot Edge, advisory and consultancy group, I stand here representing a firm born from a simple but powerful mission to unlock funding, build sustainable trade ecosystems, help businesses across Africa become financially ready to thrive. At Pivot Edge, we believe Africa's future will not be built on silos, but through strategic partnerships that merge finance, logistics, and innovation. And today's conversation embodies exactly that spirit. Today's conversation is not just about payment, it's about power. The power to trade, the power to include, the power to define Africa's digital destiny on our own terms. As the Elevate Africa platform reminds us, transformation begins when purpose meets possibility. And so our question today is bold and necessary. What will it take to build borderless Africa? One that trades with itself, trusts itself, and transforms itself through digital finance. I'm deeply honored to share this stage with some of the most brilliant minds shaping that future. Athman Ali from Visa Solutions, bridging innovation between governments and the private sector. Abraham Osio of Afreximbank, leading the charge of PAPS and Africa's payment sovereignty. Ehi Beniti, CEO of Rankard, a pioneer redefining digital connectivity across the continent. Adesu, founder and managing partner of Aurora Capital Management, a trailblazer in genderless investing. Kabu Sebele, who's representing Keletso Olebile, CEO of the Botswana Investment and Trade Center, representing policy excellence and visionary leadership. And last but not least, Dr. Akin Akimpelu, founder of AALD, a research-driven consulting, training, and capacity development firm committed to enhancing institutional performance and service delivery across sectors. Let's begin our conversation. Athman, interoperability is often framed as a technical challenge, but in Africa, it's about identity and sovereignty. How do we build interoperable systems that unite the continent without erasing local nuances and cultural identity?
Thank you. I think that's an excellent question to kick us off, right? And there are a couple of observations I'd like to make in response to that. The entire concept of interoperability is about inclusion, not division. And therefore, the question that you ask in terms of preserving the sovereignty and the cultural identity of those being made interoperable is actually inbuilt in the definition, right? So when you translate that into Pan-African trade, intra-regional trade, and the payment systems that are existing today, you will notice one thing, that this national payment systems, regional payment systems, Pan-African payment systems like PAPS already embody a culture of trust that reflects our Pan-African, localized, regional, and continental values and cultures. This is why you have diverse ways of trading in a market in Nigeria, which is fundamentally unique to how a market in Kenya operates.
Yeah.
And yet it's the same fundamental transaction that is underlying this. It's about payments, it's about trust. And the best way to make trust transferable within the payment systems that we have to design to be interoperable is to be very deliberate in the design itself. So when we're looking at the platforms, the payment gateways, the dispute resolution mechanisms, the user interfaces, we really have to think from a local perspective while enabling a Pan-African opportunity in terms of cross-border payments. Trust travels when it's embedded in these designs, and this is a fundamental belief that we have at Visa. What we do is we work with local ecosystems without asking them to change who they are, but enabling them to actually be fundamentally more efficient and to work better. We have conversations with PUBs. PUBs are who they are. We have partner banks in Botswana, in Nigeria. We follow their fundamental principles and values. And what we do is we provide a conversation, a platform, a convening of technology and policy partners working with governments to make sure that actually sovereignty is respected while payments get increasingly more efficient for the vision that we have for Pan-African trade. So that's my quick response to this. What you need to take away is that interoperability and regional integration, by definition, is about inclusion. And therefore, we have to start from there. Thank you.
Great stuff. That's a great segue into PAPS. Abraham, PAPS is more than infrastructure. It's really a declaration of Africa's financial independence. What milestones so far have been achieved so far, and what's next for full-scale continental adoption?
Thank you so much, Karen. So before I answer the question, I would like to take you on a journey 60 years back. Our founding fathers at the first meeting of AU 1963 had a vision of sovereignty, and they had a vision of creating a payments and clearing house for the African continent. In 1963, even Visa still was not operating. SWIFT was not operating, but the vision was very clear. And then they also said that on one of the resolutions, it was freeing African national currencies from non-technical connections from across the globe. So that journey of 60 years, we've taken some learning for the 60 years, and now perhaps being conceptually being implemented in 2019, and then the full commercial launch in 2022. Today we have connected 19 countries. We have connected over 150 commercial banks across Africa. We have connected 17 national switches. Brings to my point to what Ali said about interoperability. So our journey for connecting Africa and using local currency to do trade is something that we take seriously. And the learnings that we've seen is that digital actually supercharges economies. And the lesson is from Kenya. If you look at the mobile money revolution in 2007, Kenya's GDP was about less than 30 billion. And by 2025, you can see that its GDP grew fivefold. If you look at the GDP per capita, it was less than $1,000. Now it's about $2,000, $2,200. So you can see the power of digital in transforming economies. Yeah.
Amazing. The M-Pesa story, I think, is amazing as well in Kenya. Ehi and I had spoken earlier, and Ehi, fintechs are really the bloodline of Africa's digital inclusion story. Bold, innovative, resilient, and you get it. How can fintechs deepen inclusion for the unbanked and underbanked? Because that's a real issue in Africa.
Thank you very much. I think that's a really, really important question. But before I sort of jump in that journey, I think it's important to acknowledge our sponsors, our Royal Highnesses. I think that over the last few years, there have been lots of important conversations had around Africa. If we go back into the 2000s, there was a conversation about the lions of Africa rising. And these conversations started, and we had many false starts. Didn't quite end well. And I think at the heart of it is this idea of who's convening. What's the role of where does the trust sit today in convening us to have these important conversations? Unfortunately, politicians are a little compromised because the trust doesn't sit with them anymore. So I think there's a really important role for forums like Elevate Africa to begin new conversations about how we govern, how we lead, and how we transform the future of our continent from an unbiased point of view. And I thought it was really important to acknowledge and strengthen that, and to thank you for your efforts. It's often said that a wise man plants trees for generations for which they will not sit under. And I think this is an extremely powerful tree being planted here today. So many thanks to you for your generosity and leadership in this regard. But brings us back to today. So Africa is not short on ideas or innovation or talent. What is short on is execution. Today, we have $1 trillion. Think about that number. 1 trillion, 1 plus 9 zeros, US dollars equivalent, sitting in mobile wallets on the continent. This is capital which is sitting in everywhere from Cairo to Cape, Douala to Dakar, and in between. And it's underutilized, underutilized capacity. What we've tried to do is explore how this connected economy, which is alive and thriving, can be harmonized into creating new pathways for the modern economy. The challenge is that you have 44 different monetary zones, okay? 44 different monetary zones. You have at least 40 different currencies, many different regulations, SADC, the West African Monetary Union, the East African Monetary Union, etc. So whilst the idea of African unity is alive and well, what it's really short on is the ability to integrate these. And this is the problem which every fintech, as it tries to scale across Africa, quickly runs into. So it starts out with great ambition, builds some momentum in its local market, and then tries to cross borders and discover that the barriers to executing are real and systemic and structural. Different monetary policies, different currencies, different regulatory profiles, and those are not things which are easily overcome by fintechs by themselves. What you need to do is fix the financial market infrastructure, the regulatory and the policy framework around this, so that businesses can advance. So today, that's the big struggle. I think that perhaps kudos to Afrexim Bank has championed the initiative in this regard. At one of our portfolio companies, Bridge, we've taken an approach towards aggregating mobile money wallets, so bringing interoperability at the mobile layer. And we believe that efforts like this and many more should begin to move the conversation forward, which ultimately enables fintechs to take advantage of what is truly a very powerful market, but really lacking on the execution side of things today.
Thanks, Ehi. Shifting gears a little, Adesso, inclusive finance is not charity. It's really a strategy for sustainable growth. How can modern payment systems help close the gender finance gap for women entrepreneurs, ranging from small scale to billionaires, really?
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to Ogiame Atuashe III and Aloria Atuashe III for having me. So at Aurora Capital, we're really focused on closing the gender funding gap through investing. So we invest through the funds that we manage in female-led, female-focused, and female-founded businesses. And we invest under 4 pillars. So it's essentially basic needs. And fintech is under one of those pillars, alongside healthcare, alongside renewable energy, and alongside consumer goods. And for us, we saw a $42 billion gender funding gap. And when we have women in Africa making up 50% of the population, we have Africa having the highest rate of female entrepreneurship in the world, 4 times more than Europe. It doesn't make sense to us that only 2% of capital is going to women. And you and I know that women in Africa are really the bedrock of our economies. The informal economy and informal trade, which makes up 95% of trade across the continent, is a $1 trillion opportunity. And guess what? In that informal trade segment, women make up 80% of it. So, as I thought about this panel, I wanted to also highlight that significant disparity that we have within our the financial ecosystem, which is unfairly underserving, what is the bedrock and the engine of most of our African economies. But how can payments close this gap? Well, payments are really a gateway to identity, data, and trust. And we've seen that in the companies that we've invested in, when they've been able to think about financial solutions that think about women and cater to women, we've seen 3 things. One is they've been able to lower the activation cost for women. So meeting women where they are, whether that's using tiered KYC systems, whether that's using agent-assisted onboarding, whether that's using the POS that the market woman is using, her daily transactions, using that as collateral rather than asking for physical assets. So lowering that activation cost, lowering that entry cost is very, very important. And we've seen that companies that have been able to do that have been able to meet women where they are. The second thing is, I touched on this, turning cash flows into collateral. How can you use, at each point that woman in the stall is interacting with her customer, that point of sale, how can you use those daily transactions as, those cash flows as insights into how you can lend to this woman to provide buy now, pay later solutions for her inventory. We have a business in our portfolio called Omni Retail. They're processing about 32 billion naira worth of lending to about 150,000 retailers in Nigeria. And they've been able to use POS systems to not only facilitate payments, but also use the data from these POS systems to lend. And what they found is when they've disaggregated this data by gender, women are paying back their loans quicker. So if you're able to be, there's a joke that Dr. Adesina said once. He said, African women, 98.5% of them pay back their loans. The remaining 1.5% is their husbands telling them not to pay. So women pay back. Women have good credit. And if you're intentional about disaggregating this data and actually pricing the risk, we've seen that you can actually reduce interest rates for women and not have this blanket approach of, we have a women's loan program from a commercial bank and we just have one interest rate. How can you use data? How can you use meeting them where they are with that POS to make better informed decisions and price your risk in a way that is more intentional and catering to that customer? So lowering the activation cost turning cash flows into collateral, getting insights from daily transactions, which is what, the bedrock of our economies are. It's informal trade. It's market women selling you your Coke, your bread. This is the engine of our economy. And it's a $1 trillion opportunity. So we want to invest in businesses that are able to tap into that and meet underserved, overlooked female entrepreneurs where they are, but also seeing it as a very, very attractive investment opportunity. So payments, going back to your question, is a very good way to level the playing field for entrepreneurs and enable that cross-border trade, enable scalability of these SMEs that otherwise wouldn't have been able to get a bank loan, can now open 4 or 5 businesses because they've had access to credit and access to payments. So we have seen within our portfolio payments as a tool to address inequality and facilitate trade.
Amazing. As an ex-banker and now a finance strategist, I can definitely concur and agree that women pay back. So anyone looking to lend money, please make sure it's to women. You get your money back. Kabu, I'm going to come to you. Harmonization is really the backbone of the AFCFTA's digital dream. Where do you see the most urgent areas that need alignment to enable seamless cross-border trade?
Okay, no, thank you. Then maybe before I respond to you, just basically to state our national vision. As our president says, our national vision is to be competitive in terms of digitalization. His vision is to position Botswana as a competitive hub for digitalization technology in Africa. So the policy harmonization where I see, basically one will come around the issue of digital infrastructure. And as she has already mentioned, there's an issue around data insights. So it is very key for Africa to have platforms that allows us to exchange data, basically to inform, as you are saying, which opportunities can be scalable, having a lower operational cost, and then also which opportunities can the government unlock. There is a need for regulatory reform and alignment to have in Africa. And of course, African Bank has already undertaken a lead by introducing the Pan-Africa settlement systems, of which Botswana is working also on adopting. So I believe as Africa, we need to have one policy harmonization, and also now we should be able to also have platforms that allow us to pay online without necessarily having to go through international banks.
Thank you so much, Gabi. Dr. Akin, AALP has built something priceless, trust. As someone who considers myself a global citizen, a Pan-Africanist, how can that trust extend beyond national board into digital ecosystem?
Thank you very much. All right. Thank you very much. Special thanks to the Majesties for this. The issue of trust, right, is quite an interesting thing. You know how, and I'll speak more from the place of execution and performance, which is what our organization is a lot into. What we do is we are a research-driven innovation company, and we foster what you call institutional performance and service delivery across sectors. Now, from that perspective, I would say that, trust is like a mobile, what I'll call a mobile money network. You know how it is strong in your house, but outside your house is not so strong again. It begins to buffer. So in your house, there's so much of trust. Then once you are out of that coverage, it begins to buffer. There are many reasons why it could buffer. So until people begin to trust our are digital platforms, particularly just like WhatsApp, as simple as WhatsApp, to say that if I send a WhatsApp message from Nigeria, somebody in Kenya can get exactly the same message. It does not change. If I say, how are you, from Nigeria, and I send it to somebody in Kenya, it does not say, hope you are fine. All the person reads is, how are you? So it's called digital trust. And so for digital trust to happen, I will share a few things. Number one, I would say that we must begin to have collaborative efforts of regulators. So I'm talking about the central banks of different nations. I would say that Central Bank of Nigeria, Central Bank of Kenya, Central Bank of Botswana, can we always meet together, not just in conferences like this, but can we sit on round tables and agree that there must be collaboration amongst different countries? Number two is I'll talk about what I'll call shared standard. And shared standard is basically from the perspective of what I will say, having confidence in different countries. I want to be able to send money, and I want to have confidence that I would get, the other person in the other country will get the money. So that speaks a lot to our harmonized technologies and platforms. It speaks a lot to things like our protocols, our cybersecurity protocols. We coming together into an agreement. Number three, I will say that from the perspective of tracking. So if I order a product from Jumia, for example, I can track my product. I can tell where it is, and I can tell when I would receive it. I think that if people are able to track, if they can track their monies, people would have a lot of confidence to say that now I sent in my money. If you say T+1 days, I should be able to say when my money is in 6 hours, in 8 hours. I don't want to be lost in the midst of all of that. And let me just say the last one. I'll talk about cultural trust. He was speaking from Pap's perspective, and I would say that is good, because the truth is that people trust people. People don't trust institutions. Yeah. They trust people. So we must, but like the fintechs must now begin to see how do we collaborate with the cooperative banks, with the SACCOs, and all of those people to ensure that they're able to reach the people. So I would say that, you see, trust doesn't come from the cloud. We have to build it. And for us to build it, it's going to be one connection at a time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kim. I think what I'm hearing you say is the future of finance is really not built on systems, but it's built on trust. Thank you for that. I'm going to come back to you, Ehi. What systematic barriers still prevent African fintechs from scaling across borders? Because it's a real issue.
Okay, so this time I'll be brief. Systematic barriers that prevent Africans from scaling across borders. Obviously, I'd start with the first one, which is the different regulatory policies across markets. So the lack of regulatory harmonization across our 44 different monetary zones remains a significant barrier. This is one. The second thing is that most African currencies, and actually most African financial markets, are illiquid. So even when there is good intention, there is not enough liquidity in those markets to make the markets work. And all illiquid markets fail, whether it's capital markets or stock markets. If you don't have a deliberate policy around financial market infrastructure. So there are two things here. There are payment systems, which are an important part of financial market infrastructure, but payment systems alone are not financial market infrastructure. Financial market infrastructure has depth, it has regulation, it has liquidity, it has the systems which drive it. And today, I think we have built a layer of payment systems on relatively weak financial market infrastructure. So even though the payment systems exist, the fundamental problems are still there. The structural issues have not been dealt. If I have Naira and you've got South African Rand, what is the basis of our trade, given that our currencies do not have the same trade balances? So when you break down the fundamental economics of it, the systems work, but the financial market infrastructure, which drives those systems, still has a lot of work to be done. And I think that the opportunity for conversations like this is for us and our regulators to begin to think about how we reorganize this. Do we need to all go back to gold as a common trading standard? Do we need to think about new financial products like stable coins in terms of thinking of how we harmonize this financial market infrastructure across the continent? Most countries have a monetary policy which allows flows in, but no flows out. So if you, and I'm sure that there are many people on this panel who can relate, because you design your nice system and then the money flows in only one direction because the policies and I see my brother from PAP smiling because I'm speaking his pain. The policy does not reflect, and this is true for every fintech. So I want to scale across borders. As far as I'm scaling across borders, there are always two parties involved in a transaction: the sending party and the receiving party. Now, if I send in one currency, at some point, the person who is receiving has to be able to change that currency into something that he wants. But the underlying economics which drive it suggest that for him to make that change, he must have some demand for the currency which is being changed to. And if you don't have a framework for governing that demand, then you will not have a financial system that works, no matter how well-intentioned you are about building a payment system on it. So I would suggest that the conversations that have to be had are a little deeper and a lot more structural. And, the beautiful thing about Africa is that I think entrepreneurs have done more for African integration than, and I'm not taking a stab at governments, I love governments, than governments have in a sense. So when the African Promise, the Rising Lions, failed in the 2010s, it was the DSTVs, the MultiChoice, the Guinness, the football, the Nollywood, and Davido and Afrobeats that picked up the regional integration and did for us in creating a shared African identity through cinema, culture, and other things, and the creative power of Africa in ways in which we never could on a stage with politicians. I'm choosing my words very carefully. So I think there is that element to it. And what is really needed now is to allow entrepreneurs and non-state actors into the room to begin to redesign how we approach some of these fundamental systemic issues, which really sit outside the scope of today what governments have the capacity to close the gap on.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think, round of applause, thank you. When we democratize access, we don't just move money, we move markets. Talking about sitting with currency, I'm going to make a joke and say Athman will take all the currency and we'll take all the dollars. I'm just kidding. But Athman, just coming to you from Visa's perspective, what kinds of partnerships between government and the private sector can fast-track real-time cross-border payments?
Thank you. And I think I'll start from a slight point of diversion from one point you made. Right? I don't believe it's an us against them scenario where government and the private sector is concerned. Right? I think it's an ecosystem. And this links into the questions you've just asked. There are different roles being played by different types of entities in this cross-border equation, right? And cross-border to me, let me just define it so that my answer then is contextualized, does not only mean intra-regional trade or Pan-African trade. It also means Africa trading with the world, right? So there are two elements. And this is why you can see there's very clear complementary between activities that PAPS is doing from a Pan-African level, which we can support as Visa, but at the same time we can help PAPS link into the world and create that cross-border environment, right? So there's no conflict here. The point I'm trying to make is there is rarely in any situation where digital payments and cross-border payments are concerned, where I've seen it's either us or them, right? It's always an ecosystem approach, right? And part of this ecosystem approach is looking at it from the context of governments being the policy enablers, private sector playing a part. Governments cannot do it all, even from a point of just pure financial investments. They have to prioritize, right? And that's why you find the instruments like public-private partnerships in place to actually enable fintechs to come and work with governments on specific issues, right? So coming to your question, the Visa point of view on this, the Visa point of view is we enable the ecosystem to thrive, right? And we look at it from the point of view of outcomes. Really, it's all about the outcomes. One of the main outcomes that we're focusing on is government efficiency. If payments can enable better procurement in governments, there will be savings that hopefully can be utilized for better universal healthcare in that country. Creates a win-win, right? So within government ecosystem, e-government services, citizens accessing payments that enable them to get a certificate for livestock, farming that they need in rural Botswana, and enables economic prosperity for the country. Yeah. So outcomes is what drives us, right? From the point of view of trade, it's typically from a Pan-African point of view, three major outcomes, I would say. One is we know as Pan-Africa we're import heavy. We need to increase our exports. Digital payments play a role in that. We know that there's no inter-regional trade or very little happening. Payments come into that, right? And it has to be done in equity, right? So that you're not leaving anyone behind, right? So this is broadly how to define. So the key elements then are about, enabling these public-private partnerships to thrive, therefore driving the investments, creating opportunities for local ecosystems, fintechs, to actually participate in creating their own prosperity, right? And looking at leveraging regulatory technology sandboxes that are co-created between government and the private sector, leveraging strong institutions, strong partnerships, and driving in investments. That's the Visa point of view on how we look at catalyzing payments as a foundational pillar of Africa's prosperity. Yeah. Right? And on this, I want to make, if you allow me, a very quick proposal to elevate Africa, actually, because we've heard about fintechs and the barriers that they have. I've just spoken about involving the local ecosystem. I've had a very early stage conversation with the CEO, Daniel Ikonope, about Visa collaborating with Elevate Africa on co-creating a joint program that is focused on fintechs as a start, right? And there's something to follow through.
Thank you so much. That's a great commitment. I think, I was talking to a friend of mine who said that there's a saying in Africa that if you're in a forest and you go around the same tree twice, you have failed. So you are making a commitment, you're changing the narrative that this is just not a stage, but things are going to happen. So thank you, a round of applause. Just in the interest of time, I just want to spotlight Adesua again. Because when women rise, economies just don't grow, they multiply. Have you seen any case studies of your portfolio companies that have used technology to facilitate cross-border payments? And if you can maybe answer that in 2 minutes, that would be amazing.
Yes, definitely. So we've seen a few of our companies do this very successfully. So we have another company that is been able to enable SMEs work with fintechs in Nigeria. So I think that if we're able to find companies that have very, very strong unit economics that can withstand the shocks that we see in our currency every 3 or 4 years, if we can find companies that are able to reach hard-to-reach areas. So I always say it's distribution, not downloads. We're not interested in app downloads. We want you to be able to reach that last-mile customer in a village that may not, have access to an app. So how does your technology work in offline situations? I think that's very important to be able to facilitate payments and lending at scale. So this company, PingMe, is one that's been able to do that very well with its technology and how it's been able to plug into banking and fintech systems through APIs to be able to, enable that. Another company I touched on them earlier, Omni Retail. About 75% of their 150,000 retailer network are women. And we've seen that, through their technology, these MSMEs are getting access to credit, they're able to facilitate payments, they're able to grow their businesses at scale, and they're operating not just in Nigeria, but in Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, and Ghana. So if you're able to find these type of businesses that have very strong unit economics, low customer acquisition costs, low NPLs because they have the machine learning through their data, that is collecting sales outputs, collecting data at points of logistics, deliveries and fulfillment. Having that full spectrum of data enables you to be able to lower your customer acquisition costs, but also reduce your non-performing loans through data, AI, and machine learning. So these are just two examples within our portfolio where we've seen that through their solution, they've been able to work across borders in multiple countries. And as a fund manager, we want to continue to invest in these type of solutions that are not only profitable, but also highlighting and showcasing strong impact as well by giving access to SMEs that would be traditionally overlooked by large commercial banks. So we'll continue to invest in these segments.
Amazing. So as we conclude, to achieve a borderless Africa, we must move forward from a fragmented ambition to a unified execution. So in the interest of time, I'm going to give you literally...
That is trustworthy. I think that I will make it our favorite mobile money platform. What's in my mind is that everybody begins to believe in the prosperity of Africa. I believe that beyond technology, once we can have seamless payments across board, and money moving around, and people can track and trust their money, I think it will make a lot of sense. There is no greater publicity than just that Mama Amina in the market who says that I got an alert, I got my money through an offline infrastructure, and she can run around and tell everybody in the market to say, I got my money. There's no publicity that is greater than that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Kabu, 10 seconds, please.
Thank you. I think coming from the government side, my key message will be, one, the government needs to facilitate regional cross-border trade platforms, build a modernized infrastructure, and create an enabling environment. And I think most importantly is to support private sector innovation, especially around fintech.
Thank you so much. Adesu.
So I have two comments. The first one is, let us also learn from other countries that have done this successfully. So India has a unified payment interface that is solving what PAPS wants to try and do for Africa. Obviously, India's was easier because it was only dealing with one currency, but let us take learnings from that, because Africa is mobile first, it's entrepreneurial, it's informal. We have to be innovative in how we address the problem, and I think we should take lessons from those that have gone before us to see how we can remove the frictions of regulation and policy to enable faster acceleration through mobile-first solutions, similar to what India has done. Okay. The second is, let us provide entrepreneurs with the enabling environment to innovate. Let us put in the right types of policies around tax, around ease of doing business, around, how do I register a business in Uganda if I'm sitting in Nigeria? How do I register a business in Nigeria if I'm sitting in Uganda? Ghana, for example, I remember it was very hard for one of our companies to set up a business there. So policy is also the foundation of allowing our entrepreneurs to innovate, because this revolution is going to be driven by private entrepreneurs. It's not going to be driven by government.
Thank you. Ehi, 2 seconds.
I'll do my best. So I think my closing remarks are that I believe that the path forward is ecosystem-led, private sector-driven, with the support of governments and other stakeholders. I think that we've had the big ideas since the 60s, but we're really short on the execution. And I think we need to find new pathways which enable the private sector take the lead in redesigning what financial infrastructure needs to look like. But it does require that governments continue to act as the navigators in helping catalyze this new ecosystem for our financial futures.
Thank you so much, Ehi. Athman, 1 minute, 1 second, please. Not even a minute. We don't have a minute.
No, I'll just focus on the commitment I just made and reconfirm it. And also that we would like as Visa to have conversations with as many entities that are involved in financing projects around digital identity, digital payments, and data for policy innovation who are in this room. And so please reach out through the connections I will provide to the operating team. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Abraham?
Thank you. I think for me, I'll just say collaboration is power. As we're building across this system, Africa has 42 currencies, 19 central banks and 19 countries are on board. So the future is up for us to co-create together. So if you're in government and looking to join PAPS, if you're a commercial bank looking to join PAPS, feel free to reach out to me. And if you're in private sector, let's collaborate.
Wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for watching us. It's a wrap.
Lovely, lovely stuff. Thank you so much, panel. You saved us some time. Thank you, Karen. Well handled. Please converge for a group photo. We've got a slew of lenses ready to capture this historic moment and conversation. Come a little closer. We talk of African connectedness, so let's come closer. That was the panel on intra-Africa trade, how we bridge the gap. I think that conversation was quite informative, and as highlighted, guys, my audience, it is important for us to be intentional with our problem solving. Do we, like somebody highlighted that we've got almost like over a lot of central banks, do we bring that into one? So many currencies, do we leverage that? Where do we go next? That is the question. And that's the question that the panel is leaving you with. Thank you so much. Thank you, my panel. Capturing these 2 days that elevate Africa, the next chapter. So our conversation is going to continue. However, at this juncture, we will be going for our break or our lunch. Before that takes place, let me give you a little taste of what happens after the break. We're going to move into our breakout room so that we can further our conversation into smaller groups and look for solution. Topic 1 that's going to be happening in this main hall is She Leads, Innovating for Inclusive Power in Africa. That will be happening right here. It will be also happening at the same time with the Marketing Africa to the World, from narrative to commerce. I really like this topic. It's going to be in room 1. I'm sure the ushers will be able to guide you to where you are supposed to go if you want to be or need to be part of that topic and conversation. The third one that's going to be taking place similarly at the same time, collaboration through trade, unlocking opportunities for growth and shared prosperity. That is taking place at room 2. And then the final, just give me a second, please. The final topic of the afternoon will be, how can Africa leverage technology to leapfrog ahead? We've done that before. I'm sure we can do it again. That is taking place in room 3. All of these will be taking place at the same time. After that, those plenary sessions, we will then converge right back here to hear an address from His Majesty. So kindly make sure that you are getting your sessions in within time and come back here for us to hear. Before we do depart the room, kindly let me just acknowledge some of our supporters and sponsors for the morning session. Panel 1 was sponsored by the good people at Turf. Please do give them a round of applause as I announce them. Panel 2 by the Bureau of National Study Techniques. A round of applause for them. And then our next panel that will be taking place in the main room is sponsored by the Rainbow Room Foundation. A huge round of applause for them. I know I've said a mouthful, but I'm about to say the most important thing. Ladies and gentlemen, for the next 40 minutes, lunch is served. Thank you. His Majesty will be departing the room, so kindly let us wait for His Majesty to depart the room. His Majesty will be departing the room, so kindly let us wait for His Majesty to depart the room and lead us to lunch. We will follow after that. Thank you so much for your indulgence. Enjoy your lunch.
We don't cast, last, now everybody go to breakfast. Shayo, Shayo, you go bow for the result, nothing to discuss, cause I did win by default and without any doubt, I'm a me happy adult, I no go feed the girl, I no go feed the girl is out, I'm a mind that's you the talk, I put my life into my job and I know I'm in trouble, she manipulate my love, I know holy, and I know that get both, like the Baba Frayo, my ayo, don't cry yo, I need to go and shadow, 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 I need to go and shadow, I need to go and shadow, I need to go and shadow.
Peace, where you get the sauce, boy?
It's so very typical for people to choose to ignore the love that's pure and genuine, but rather focus on material. Totally none of anybody else's business. Even if the love of me life is the hideous or hideous, one thing that matters is kiss me, please fulfill me with your tender loving care.
So take for instance, if you feel as if you miss me, or feel as if your strength is weak, then I shall always be there. Took a yellow long, I get to Sunday, I just want you how long I love to see you. Release and release and release. Time with you, release and release and release and release. Release. Tato le feri la gale feri. Tato le feri la gale feri. Release and release and release. 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 Release, 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 and release and release. Time when you move about release and release and release and release. About release. Tato le feri la gale feri. Tato le feri la gale feri. Release and release and release. Release and release and release. This be la hala rato lili butipa. Listen na mariki. Hawana mutana malima yakana. Rasi bu isiketa mchi. Kama beri mautu kine kine. Una motu wawe na uni wani ile mwana wa mekabo yote jami kine kine. Sitenzo pichanda ogo. Tora kamina za holo. Ingwa ba ile ojole. Kupa me yengwa yala kurungu tele botu. Kwa bon leta go. Kuparun release. Release. Kuparun release. Kuparun dohela. 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 Release and release and release. Time with you, Kuparun release and release and release and release. Kuparun release. Tato le feri la gale feri. Tato le feri la gale feri. Release and release and release. 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 Release, 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 and release and release. Time with you, Kuparun release and release and release and release. Kuparun release. Rato le feri la gale feri. Rato le feri la gale feri. Release and release and release. Release and release and release. Remember yourself, you're a conqueror, a warrior. That is very dangerous, that's who you are. Give it up to the most high God. Badimo bamele bonela. Oma tutti pudi muhitile stela bentile bar rapela. I could have lost my life in an accident. Could have been cursed by a wizard. Despite all the odds against me, yes, I believe. That's a mile when you go. The matela when you go. That's a mile when you go. The matela when you go. When you go. When you go. Of surprise, fire and water, the land and the air. Pay close attention, got to be vigilant. Everyday life getting stranger than fiction. Represent me from call spiritual. It is bigger than me. I'm only just an employee. God hired me. walking by me. That's a mile when you go. The Matela when you go. That's a mile when you go. That's a Matela when you go. When you go. When you go. Komangalagaling, komangalagaling, komangalagaling. Komangalagaling, komangalagaling, komangalagaling. Komangalagaling, komangalagaling, komangalagaling. Komangalagaling, komangalagaling, komangalagaling. That's a mile when you go. The Matela when you go. That's a mile when you go. The Matela when you go, 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 Tamaya, Tamaya, when you go, come on, Kalakali, that's a man when you go, the Matarima, come on, Kalakali, yeah. We tell us our definition here, how our relationship with you, what's our cause I've been hurt so many times, it even affected my career up to a point I didn't care. That's one of these shows, a nigga would get so I was always in my ear, I had my hands in the air. But I feel over my soul, kitty tag on a door. I only care about the dollar bill, yeah. Came to me like a thief in the night. I was naive, stupid, and I can't even deny. The payback was just too much. I'm surprised that I'm still alive. Ever you at, I know that you laughing. That's why I ain't wasting time trying to talk about it. I hope that the kind of love that you got for me is unconditional. You got my number, so let's talk when you got out. You got my number right. You got my number right. You got my number right. You got my number, so let's talk when you got out. I hope that the kind of love that you got for me is unconditional. You got my number right. You got my number right. You got my number right. You got my number, so let's talk when you got out. You got my number right. You got my number right. You got my. Just anxiety, depression, I kept inside of me. I had a text for the Catalo, Rabin Polayi. What emotional time, you will have an element, so I had a million. Moran, what it would is I was trying to live, copy it, Tabila, Harama, exhausted and I'm tired from all the reverse in psychology, but I deliver to it, me calling my name on stage. Meanwhile, I got a big black cloud over Miami. Meanwhile, I'm busy fighting my demon Miami. Meanwhile, knowing deep down inside, knowing way too well, no one wanna listen to a story about a guy who believes in LOVE, and the guts and the glory. Is it love? Is it hate? Is it me? Is it you? Is it them? Is it us? Because for me, you enough. Why be insecure? Less is more, love your natural beauty. Ain't no need for extra makeup. Oh baby, how else would I know you better if we didn't make up and break up? I hope that the kind of love that you got for me is unconditional. You got my number, so let's have one. You got my number right. You got my number right. You got my number right. You got my number, so let's have one. I hope that the kind of love that you got for me is unconditional. You got my number right. You got my number right. You got my number right. You got my number, so let's have one. You got my number right. You got my number right. You got my.
Sprinkle daily portion from my head for this jungle. Many people I they ready, Lord, you know. Daily need you for my hand, cause as I did on Paragon, and they Paragon. Effect oh your goodness, oh my life be your aka, and your business, oh effect oh your goodness, oh my life be your aka, and your business, oh every day I move with bloody of Jesus. Every day I move with body of Jesus. As I walk my lane for this world of many in your job. Oh, every day I move with body of Jesus. Baba, now you know tomorrow. Cover me from people who won't bring me sorrow. I know fit imagine how my life fit take on if you leave me go. Effect oh your goodness, oh my life be your aka, and your business, oh effect oh your goodness, oh my life be your aka, and your business, oh every day I move with body of Jesus. Every day I move with body of Jesus. As I walk my lane for this world of many in your job. Oh, every day I move with body of Jesus. Every day I move with body of Jesus. Every day I move with body of Jesus. As I walk my lane for this world of many in your job.